We will be going over the integumentary system today. All right, so integumentary system. This includes skin, hair, nails, and the glands in the cutaneous system, which are your sweat glands and oil glands. All right. This is the largest organ on the body. Okay. Again, about 50% of your body weight. It has very thin regions, less than 0.5 millimeter thick, your eyelids, and some very thick regions, like around between your shoulder blades, where it's around 6 millimeters thick, excuse me. So various regions have various thickness. The functions of the skin are to, first and foremost, again, is the barrier to keep insects out, bacteria, viruses, parasites of all kinds. So that's its main thing, is a barrier. And so that function is the protection function. It's also thermal regulation, causing us to sweat when we get warm. And then whenever we cool down, we get the goosebumps and shiver, and it can cut off a little bit of circulation to help keep heat inside the body. Sensations, these are the nerve endings in the skin. We have some capsuled, some capsulated, unencapsulated ones. There's ones on the bulb of the hair to feel movement. Metabolic functions, the main metabolic functions are the production of vitamin D, and we need vitamin D so that we can absorb calcium. There's lots of blood in the skin, so there's a good portion of it to be stored there. And we excrete waste, which comes again back to thermoregulation. Sweat, we release, there are waste products that are excreted in sweat. Here are the layers of it. This thin layer right up here, this kind of beigeish one with the undulated line, that is the epidermis, the outer layer. This really pink portion is the dermis. It's broken up into two separate layers. The epidermis is in 5 layers. And then you have this region down here with these yellow areas. That's the hypodermis. Technically, it's not part of the skin, but we include it in this area. Notice that there are blood vessels through the dermis, but not the epidermis. You've got the hairs coming down into the bulbs. These yellow fibers, these particular ones here are unencapsulated nerve endings. These are capsulated nerve endings. Then you have nerve endings on the root hairs themselves, the muscles for the root hairs. Sweat glands have a duct system on them, and they are at the pores. Then you have oil glands that are on the part of the hair. They're, excuse me, not part of the hair, but they're attached to the hair follicles, keeping hair soft. And we'll go over all these parts later in the chapter. So again, 2 distinct regions. You have the epidermis, which is the superficial or the outermost region. All right, this is all epithelial tissue, and it is avascular. A means that it was without vascular blood supply, so there is no blood going to the epidermis. The dermis, which is a much thicker region, is deep to the epidermis. It's a connective tissue instead of epithelial, and it is vascular. There is blood flowing to this, and there's nerves there also. Then you have a layer beneath this called the hypodermis. Hypo means lower or below, so it's below the dermis. Again, it's deep to the skin because it's technically not part of the skin, but it does share some of these functions. This is where you have adipose tissue, which is fat tissue, so it can absorb shocks, and it helps insulate. So when you bump something, it doesn't hurt as much, and then it insulates you. This attaches the skin mainly to the muscles underneath it because the skin sits on top of muscles. Types of cells in the epidermis. We have the keratinocytes. These produce keratin, which makes them harder. And this gives us the skin protective properties, protection from abrasions. These fall off every day. We call this dander flaking skin coming off. That's all these keratinocytes. Melanocytes produce a pigment called melanin. And these are packaged into melanosomes, which are little vesicles inside the cell. These protect the nucleus from UV damage. So that's part of the reason why your skin gets darker in the summer when you tan, because you're producing more melanin, producing more of those making those melanosomes to protect the DNA, your nucleus. And it's when you don't have this is how you end up with skin cancer. It doesn't produce. So people who are paler, again, they're not producing as much of true melanin, of the dark melanin, and that causes makes them more susceptible to UV damage. Not saying that someone with very dark skin cannot get skin cancer. It's just less likely. We have dendritic cells. These are white blood cells with macrophages, and these flow through the epidermis to identify any foreign bodies like bacteria, viruses, parasites, and these will activate the immune system to come and remove that foreign protein, a foreign body. Then we have tactile cells, and these are your nerve cells, and again, they're throughout this dermis around the hair bulbs, the root hair, and these are, for again, sensing touch, pressure, temperature, things like that. These are your layers of the epidermis, starting, there's the dermis, the little area down here. We have various layers in there. There's some tactile cells. There's a melanocyte that's going to produce the melanin that goes into the other cells. And there's a dendritic cell. All right, so the outermost layer is the stratum corneum. Corneum is in like horn for harder. This is very keratinized, so it's again very durable, resistive abrasions and penetration, and these are dead cells also, so they're not going to dry out any more than what they are, so they resist water loss. Because they are dead cells, they do act as a biological barrier, to biological, chemical, and physical assaults. So again, that's why we slough them off all the time, and we're constantly making new ones, and that's what the exfoliate is. And as it comes off, we call it dander. The layer just below this is called the stratum lucidum. This is only in thick skin. It's a very thin layer, only a couple of cells thick. I'll back up from it. The stratum corneum is very thick region of the epidermis. And this is only, again, it's deep to the corneum and superficial to the stratum granulosum. Stratum granulosum is our third one. Again, just a few cells thick. These cells are very flat, though. Let me back up a moment. Stratum lucidum, all the cells in stratum lucidum are dead also. These are non-living cells. The stratum granulosum, these cells are flattening out because they are starting to get too far, because of the keratinization going on. These layers are starting to die in the process of programmed cell death. Is apoptosis is the name of it. They also secrete a glycolipid layer, which is the waterproofing that will stay with them until they slough off. The stratum spinosum, these are again several layers, several cells thick. You do have keratinocytes in here, and they appear spiky, hence the spinosum spikiness of it. You have your melanocytes and dendritic cells are in this area because these are living cells. The cells above this layer begin to die. So you're going to have your nerve cells, actually your dendritic cells, which are your immune system cells, in this area. Stratum basal, this is the bottom layer. This is the it's a single layer, so it's next to the basement membrane. They're roughly cuboidal in shape. These are the ones. These are the skin cells that grow. So these cells will divide. So it'll make, you have one cell, you'll make two. One of them will keep moving up, the other will stay there because it'll make a new cell, and it keeps pushing the cells up, and so that's why they end up sloughing off at the end after they die. They get farther away from the blood vessels also, and that's why they die. So that's the stratum basal. The dermis, this has been the tissue beneath the epidermis, 2 layers, the papillary region, which is an areolar tissue, which is a very loose connective tissue. It's got lots of spaces in it. These spaces allow blood vessels and nerves to pass through. Then you have the reticular region, which is a dense connective tissue, and it helps attach to other layers. It gives it a little more resistance too. Hair follicles, sweat glands, oil glands are all found in this region. Dermal papillae, these are ridges that keep the epidermis from slipping off of the dermis. I'll go back to the original picture. These dermal ridges, these undulations right through here, those are the dermal ridges, and that keeps the epidermis from sliding across the dermis. Hair, there's 3 main types. Lanugo hair, which is on a fetus. Then you have vellus, which is on children, and the 2/3 of the hair on female, it's a softer hair. And then you have adult male hair. Vellus hair is only about 10% of the hair on men. Then you have terminal hair, your eyebrows, eyelashes, scalp, axillary, and pubic regions once they reach puberty. Again, this is more on men. They have it on their face, like what I have. Functions of hair is to warn from insects. When you have an insect crawling on it, it'll move, and it'll register an impulse in the tactile cells at the root hair, and it was so that you know that there's an insect there, so you can remove it in case it's something dangerous. The hair on top of our head keeps us from getting sunburnt, protects us from sun. If we bump our head on something, it also gives us a little bit of cushion. When it's cooler, it does provide some protection from heat loss. We don't have thick, downy hair like most mammals do, which is much better at it, but it does do some heat loss. And again, I already said it shields from sunlight. That's why no matter where you're from, everybody's got hair on top of their head unless they are going bald. Structure of hair. We have the shaft, which is the portion that's above this, sticking out of the surface of the skin, and the root, which is everything else. You have the bulb, which is the bottom. Anytime you see, I shouldn't say anytime. Most of the time, when you're talking about a matrix, you're talking about this is where the cells grow from. The cell has 3 layers: the cuticle, the cortex, and the medulla. Split ends is where the cuticles are breaking up when your hair gets long enough. If it's not taken care of, you can get split ends from it. And that's the cuticle breaking off. So again, the bulb is the swelling at the bottom. The root is any of it that is embedded into the skin, and the shaft is anything above the skin. Your dermal papillae, this is where it's providing the nutrition. Again, matrix is where the cells are growing. You get farther away from the matrix, and the cells die, just like in skin. You have your root sheath and root epithelial sheath and connective sheath, because it's in the dermis and does pass through the epidermis. Your receptors, those are your nerves endings that are on the bulb that are going to sense movement. Then you have an erector pili muscle. This is the smooth muscle. We can't control it. That consciously control it anyway. That will stand the hair up on the end, causing goosebumps. And what it does is it traps a little bit more heat close to the skin to help keep you warmer, help prevent some heat loss. Your nails, again, hair and nails are made out of keratinocytes. They're a little bit harder than the keratinocytes that you find in the epidermis. A few main regions of this, like this portion right here at the end, this is the hyponychium. This is the part right there. You always get fingernail, you get dirt in your fingernails. That's the hyponychium, because you're talking about hypo is under, so the hyponychium. You have your eponychium, which is what we would normally call as the cuticle in layperson's terms. And lunule is that white portion right at the base of the nail that appears white. And you have your nail bed underneath it, but your nail is, notice that it is into the skin and does grow out. Glands. We have a few different glands. We have sudoriferous glands. These are known as eccrine glands. Eccrine glands are sweat glands. All right. We have a couple different types of them. The apocrine glands are modified ones that really come into play, get activated whenever you reach puberty. You have sebaceous glands. These are oil ones. These are going to secrete, again, oil. We find these at root hairs. It helps prevent drying and cracking of your skin. Produces sebum. These are ones that will get infected with causing acne. Ceruminous glands. These are only in the ear canal, and you want earwax in there because the earwax collects stuff that gets in, and it does fall out on its own. Some clinical identification things for skin. We can tell a lot by just the color of skin. Again, some examples here. Cyanosis is where you get the blue skin, blue coloring. This means you have low oxygen in the hemoglobin. So your skin's going to turn blue. Could just be because your body's shunting blood away from the surface, like when you're cold, your lips will turn blue. Erythema is redness. We see this with fever. Somebody with hypertension, high blood pressure would do this because it's pumping more blood out to the edge. Inflammation, allergic reactions, getting more blood going to it, so it's going to turn more red. Pallor is paleness. So low blood pressure, this is just the opposite of it. You're not getting enough blood out to it. Anemia, you're not having enough blood. So, and fear and anger can cause, like you see the saying, somebody's as white as a sheet, or like white as a ghost because they're scared. Same thing. Jaundice, this is a yellow coloring. We get these from liver disorders because with the proteins that the liver makes. You can get a bronzing. It's kind of a tannishing, but it's got a metallic sheen to it. These are from hormone imbalances. Addison's disease is an example of this. And then we have bruises. This is, again, black and blue marks. This is the blood that is coagulating underneath the skin. That's it. I hope everybody enjoyed it.